This is Louis Kavoris, and this is our art encounter. So this is a really difficult thing to do because I always want to show you real art, but recording works of art that are behind glass are really difficult. Often to get a really good image of it, I'd have to take it out of the glass, and I really don't want to do that because the glass actually, not only does it honor it, but it also preserves and protects this work. So when you get a work of art, and we're going to take a closer look at this work of art, but when you get in close, you'll realize that this work of art needed to be protected because it was in pretty poor condition when I got it, and it wasn't framed, and it had been tacked and taped, and all kinds of things had happened to it, that I finally said, you know what, I think I want to put it in a place where it's preserved and taken care of. So the best place would be to put it behind some UV protective glass so that the glass protects it from harmful light and also protects it from encountering any elements that it because it had had enough. Yeah. So if we're looking at this work of art, my question first is, what is it? Now, different than the Greek lithos here, where we said this was ceramic, always start with what's the material of the piece? And someone might say, you know what, this is different because it's paper. This is created on a work of paper. I'm going to cut away to another video of the actual image while I keep talking here in front of this image. But I want to kind of show you the real work as best I can, and then I'm also going to show you some representations of it that are from books, and that will also probably help your eye see the actual lines better without the glare. The one thing that I want to say to you is this. These cameras are great, and they can get HD and all kinds of things, but they're not as good as our human eye, because when we look at this, if you were looking at it in real life, your eye could focus on the image behind the glass and not pay attention to the glare of the glass, where this camera cannot. So in those ways, I always like to say, what you're looking with is better than this expensive iPhone, much better than that. And that's one of the things that we know from even being in the theater, is that our human eyes can capture things far better and more interestingly and see what's there than the video camera can. Okay, so what is this work of art? And you will say that it's a work on paper. So I then ask, well, what is it? Because a work on paper could be many things. Is it a drawing? Is it an etching? Is it an engraving? Is it a print? And someone might say this is a print. Now, by print, that means it's not just one element, you know, or one work of art here that was made, but the artist was able to make multiple prints of this. Yeah. And so if you came in close, and let me go ahead and show you some close-up images in this film and ask you, what is it? Yeah. Finally, someone might say it's an engraving. So how was this made? This was etched. It's an etching on a copper plate. So a copper plate was carved into to make an engraving, and then it was printed. Ink was put on the copper plate, and the ink remained only where the grooves that were etched into the plate are. Now, I'll ask you this. Can you tell me where else we deal with engravings all the time? And I would say, you know what? Maybe in your pocket you have an engraving. And if you have any cash, you would know that this dollar bill is also an engraving on a copper plate, that this was engraved and then it was printed. It's one of the reasons why this has value beyond its materials. It's actually printed on really specific paper, not just any paper. What you get out of Xerox machine is far inferior to this, which actually has a fiber content and a cloth content so that it actually can last a longer amount of time. And this is an engraving. Yeah. Now, from time to time, people try to make forgeries of this, and sometimes people are successful at passing forgeries, but you know that that's against the law to do, because when you cannot replicate money in that way and make your own engravings of money. This is something that our U.S. Federal government does, and then when we earn money, we can have this. Now, nowadays, a lot of things are on cards, so this might be the kind of money that you carry, and it's virtual money. Isn't that great? It's much more like Suzanne Langer apparition, that this is the apparition, whereas this is kind of the real deal. There's even sort of scientific studies that say when you spend this, you actually feel like you're spending more money, and you'll spend less money if you're using cash than people that use credit cards can just say. It's just kind of feels a little less real. So let's get back to this work of art. So I'll ask, what is it and who is it and when was this work of art made? Yeah. Now, this is a Paranasi. Paranasi was an Italian engraver, yeah? So depending on your art history background, some people have an art history background where they can look at an engraving like this and they can say, I think it's Italian. I can just tell that this comes from that country and that kind of tradition of Italian engravers. So Paranasi was an Italian engraver. This is an interesting series because he did a series he called the prisons, the La Carceria. Yeah, the carceria, the prisons, and he created these imaginative spaces. One of the reasons why scenic designers like his work a lot, because he was one of the first representations in engraving style of these imaginative spaces, these vast vaults and these sublime, for Edwin Burke's ideas, spaces of darkness and lightness and the lines here. There were originally, I'll put a figure of how many of the engravings there were, yeah, and he made the original plates in 1740. I'll put the exact date here. I need to look it up, so I'll put it on the video. So he did the original plates. It's often called the first state. He got the plates back and he was able to recarve the plates. So this is state number 2 of number 10. The prison number 10, plate number 10. Yeah. So you're looking at a piece of paper here that is as old as our US Constitution. Yeah. You're looking at a piece of paper that this actually has an interesting history to it. Now, there's an interesting word that let's encounter with this work of art, the provenance of a piece. Yeah. Sometimes when you go to an auction or when you're buying a work of art, they will tell you its provenance. And provenance is a French term used for its history. So they'll tell you the story behind this work, who owned this work and how it got passed from person to person. This piece actually has an interesting provenance because I inherited this piece. Yeah, it was given to me by one of my mentors who was a scenic designer, Henry Kurth. Henry Kurth was a scenic designer. He designed the original for Martha Graham, the set for Diversion of Angels. He designed the original set. They no longer use that set, but he did some design work for Martha Graham. He was also stage manager and production manager for her on some of her really famous tours in the 1940s with Martha Graham. Henry Kurth had this piece, and it was in really pretty poor shape, and then he gave it to me. Yeah. What's interesting is one of his teachers, one of his mentors, Arch Lauderer, another designer, designed many works for Martha Graham, including the famous Letter to the World and some other pieces of hers as well. Um, so Arch Lauderer had this piece in his collection, and he gave this piece to Henry Kurth, who gave it to me. And what's interesting is it was given to Arch Lauderer by a kind of mentor of his, Edward Gordon Craig, who was another famous theater designer. So it has gone from theater designer to theater designer, and then it's finally come to me into my collection. Now, the most fantastic part of its history is this, that Edward Gordon Craig had it. And for the dancers in the room, I might ask you, who was with Edwin Gordon Craig? Now, they were never married, but they had a daughter together, and they were lovers together in Paris. And you might think, someone might know it was Isadora Duncan. So an interesting thing about this piece is this piece, for me as a dancer, takes me through some fantastic designers around Martha Graham and then into Edward Gordon Craig, and then back to this work could have sat in a living room or in a place with Isadora Duncan, who many consider a pioneer of the modern dance, which I'm a modern dancer, so that's highly important to me. So again, works of art can have symbolic, even histories beyond the work itself. This is an incredible imaginative space. We're going to be learning about Edmund Burke and his term, the sublime, that works of art can touch on parts of the human condition that are unknowable, untouchable. I think this imaginative space and what this prison feels like, the darkness of these figures here is fantastic. Yeah, you can see the tattered edges. Even when you get close, you can see there's places where this has been taped up, or which you shouldn't do with a really great print. There's been places where it's been tacked up, so there's some little holes in the actual paper of it. And the other thing is it's yellowed, and most probably the yellowing of this print came from people smoking around it. So we could have Isadora Duncan and Arch Lauderer and Edward Gordon Craig around this piece outside of its glass, smoking and making it yellow. So again, when I framed it, I said I want it to just float in there. Let's not try and hide any of the imperfections. Let's not cut the paper. Let's not mat it so that we hide the edge. I really wanted to see its history because its history is important to me and symbolic for me. And we're going to talk about art and value in another lecture, but there's multiple ways. This work has a kind of historic value if you're interested in art. Let me cut away to another picture. This was interesting for me because I was in Boston for the first time, and I went to the museum in Boston, and I turned the corner, and there was a wall with 6 different Paranasi engravings on it, and one of them was one that was very similar to this one here, in much better condition, yeah, which is nice because it's in the Boston Museum. But it was just kind of fantastic to sort of turn the corner and say, I know that work. I see that work all the time.